Thank you very much. I'm Olivier Clepin-Leblanc. I am with Eurodig and also the chair of the UK chapter of the Internet Society. So I'll be moderating today's meeting. We have an esteemed panel with panelists, both remote and local. Dr. Mohammed Shabir is the co-moderator. We'll hear from him in a moment. He's the coordinator of the Dynamic Coalition on Accessibility and Disability, DCAD. And then we have our speakers, starting from the remote part of the table, Vilmantas Balčikonis.
Exactly.
Who is the vice president of the Lithuanian Association of the Blind and Partially Sighted, with over 5 years of experience in the field of accessibility. And Vilmantas actively participates in various accessibility-related events and is well-versed in the European Accessibility Act. In fact, he will be the person introducing us to this wonderful, to this act that's on its way. Lydia Best is supposed to join us remotely. I haven't seen her yet. She's the president of the European Federation of Hard of Hearing People. Indre Jurgelonene, chief advisor at the Lithuanian Communications Regulatory Authority and co-chair of the body of European regulators for electronic communications. Some of you might not know that. It's actually BEREC. You probably will see BEREC. You'll understand that one. End user working group. And she'll be speaking to us both from a government perspective, but then also as an end user. And then we have Giacomo Mazzone also joining us remotely, and he's with the EDMO Advisory Board and also a Eurodig board member. So I think today's discussion is, of course, going to focus to start with the European Accessibility Act. And then what we'll do is to have each one of our stakeholders come up with their points regarding that act and how we move forward. We'll give them 5 minutes each. Then we'll open a dialogue with the whole room, and hopefully you will be able to participate because this is European Dialogue and Internet Governance. And then 15 minutes before the end of this session, which is at 1:45 the top of the hour, we will ask each one of our panelists for their closing statements or perhaps even next steps if we're able to find that. So that's how it is. I hope I'm not speaking too quickly because that's my other problem. And I know that when meetings are transcribed, the poor transcriber is sometimes having a hard time with me. The rules, yes, please introduce yourself when you speak. And I think that I can now give the floor over to Dr. Mohammed Shabir, who is joining us remotely. And he's the chair, of course, as I said, of DCAD. Over to you, Mohammed, and I hope the technology works well, and I'll stop you if your voice is chopped up.
Hello, everyone, and good day from Pakistan. I am Mohammed Shabir, and thank you, Olivier, for giving me the floor. Before I talk about the DCAD, I would first want to wish a very happy Eid al-Adha to those who are celebrating. In Pakistan, today is the Eid day. Well, coming to the topic, Dynamic Coalition on Accessibility and Disability is a setup in the IGF that aims to make the internet and digital environments accessible for persons with disabilities. It has open mailing list. Dynamic coalitions are open to everyone who wishes to join. We envision a world, a digital environment where every technology is available to everyone at the same time at no extra cost, particularly for persons with disabilities. We often see in the environments, in the discussions, persons with disabilities neglected, left out. The Dynamic Coalition on Accessibility and Disability aims to bridge this gap and fulfill the need of bringing the voice of the people to the table. Since 2009, Dynamic Coalition on Accessibility and Disability have been active in the IGF systems. We also have been participating in different NRIs and last year we started a fellowship program as well. In the upcoming weeks or so, to those who are the members of Dynamic Coalition on Accessibility and Disability and have lived experience of disability, you would be receiving information for the IGF DCAD, Dynamic Coalition on Accessibility and Disability Fellowship Program for the IGF 2024 in Riyadh. We are about to launch this fellowship program. The uniqueness of this program is that we aim to bring people with disabilities in person, and we also aim to provide them with the facilities if they want to attend remotely, the accessibility as they require. We do not fix any caps onto the fellowship. We do not fix any requirements onto what can be provided. It's the people, it's the fellow who tells us the requirements, and remaining within our budgets, which are of course limited, we try to fulfill their needs and their requirements. Eurodig, I am happy today that we are having this discussion in the Eurodig, and particularly we will be discussing the European Accessibility Act and how people with disabilities are faring in the digital environments in the European Union and in those environments. I stop here and thank you very much, Olivier. Thank you everyone for joining us today in this session.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. You've just forgotten one thing, which is how does one join the coalition?
Yes, thank you very much, Olivier, for this question. It's a very simple process. You just go on to igf-dcad.org. There is a join link. It's a very small, simple form. You join that and you are subscribed free of cost to the Dynamic Coalition on Accessibility and Disability.
Fantastic. Thank you. Well, let's now hear from our panelists. And the first person I mentioned was Vilmantas. And actually, we speak about accessibility. In a nutshell, what is accessibility? And then I guess you can go from there into explaining to us how that has been encompassed in a European Act.
Okay. So it's on the one hand, it's a simple question. On the other hand, is a kind of broad question because we have a few disabilities and a few requirements, accessibility requirements. But in a nutshell, accessibility is freedom. I have my colleague, which is blind, and she once wrote a nice Facebook post. She said, when I had my first smartphone with text-to-speech, when in Lithuania they started working e-shops, finally I could buy Christmas present to my family without knowing them, without additional help. So these changes are this area, web accessibility, app accessibility, and so on, is profoundly important for people with disabilities because it gives freedom. If it's a document and you can read it, but there's no headings, it's 200 pages long, you have to read from the start till the end. But if you have navigation capabilities, you have a lot of freedom to find information, to prepare, for example, for this meeting, for some lecture, and so on. So in general, accessibility means accessing freedom to access that information, services, and so on. And we can talk about Accessibility Act, how it's introduces accessibility. It introduces accessibility requirements in few areas. In products, in some products, these products usually are not all products. It's a bit a pity because there is no home appliances included, but there is included computers, smartphones, TVs, devices needed to access audio visual media, ATMs, payment terminals, ticketing machines, and maybe I forgot someone, but those are main. And through these devices, we access digital environment. And talking about services, also there is not all services included in this Accessibility Act, but certain services. But these are profoundly important. These services are e-shops, e-books, finance services for persons, and so on. So this is kind of enough to make a huge difference. And I felt it myself because last year we, as our organization, was chosen to communicate in Lithuania about Accessibility Act and consult enterprises, public sector about what is accessibility. So we encountered big companies, telecommunication companies, small companies, shops, physical shops, e-shops, huge variety of interest groups, and we gathered a lot of experience, a lot of questions, a lot of uncertainties, and we could speak about this now a lot because we have the experience. So, but to finish up, I felt that with this European Accessibility Act, we have huge interest from companies, and it's like impetus to work to this goal. Without this Accessibility Act, we would be stagnated and we would have more problems. Now I think the future is bright, and we can think not only how to bring bread to our table, but also about those higher goals of accessibility, inclusion, and wider society.
Is Europe ready already now, or there's still much to do?
With accessibility, you can never say ready. We are starting, Europe started a few years ago with public sector website accessibility. So we are starting not from zero. We have some standards, we have some good practices, and we are going forward. Of course, I felt a lot of fear about huge costs, about lack of knowledge, lack of specialists, and so on. So, of course, we have a lot of problems. I could say it's a start, and I would encourage everyone just to start from somewhere and build up from there.
Okay, thank you very much, Vilmantas. Let's go to our next panelist. Now, on our list, Lydia is supposed to be next, but I can't see her at the moment on the list. So we'll move straight over to our other remote panelist, and that's Giacomo Mazzone. And Giacomo is going to be speaking to us about the implementation of the Act in journalism and in media. So Giacomo, I hope we haven't been able to test your mic, but I hope we can hear you. But it's over to you, Giacomo Mazzone.
I hope that is fine, that you can hear me well.
That is way better than yesterday, Giacomo. Well done.
I said you that I would change mic. So thank you for inviting me. For me, is a return to home because I was one of the participants to DCAD since the beginning at the IGF, and also for many years I was within the ITU equivalent group. This because for a long time I've been in charge of accessibility policies at the EBU, the European Broadcasting Union. For this characteristic, I think that my main contribution to the debate of today is to talk about one recent study that is here, has been published by the European Audiovisual Observatory just in May, so very recent. The last data are from September last year. That is a guide to accessibility measures all around the European Union and the Council of Europe country members. This because in the Accessibility Act that we are talking today has been anticipated in a certain way in 2018 by the last revision of the Audiovisual Media Directive. This Audiovisual Service Media Directive is specific for broadcasting, TV and radio, and introduced already in its very first edition at the end of the 80s, some measures about accessibility, but in the revision of 2018 has been very precise and went more in deep. So this report of the European Audiovisual Observatory has been focusing on the situation or the implementation of this directive that is not, as I said before, the Accessibility Act, but is a parallel directive in all the Council of Europe country members. This report is very useful because make the point and show that in the media sector, in the broadcasting, especially in television, all over Europe, there are levels, different levels, of course, of services for people with a problem of accessibility. And in this picture, the most interesting result is that we are seeing that this is moving progressively from the linear services also to the online services, because broadcasting is moving to the online since already many years. So this transition to the online has introduced many interesting new possibilities, because for instance, many TV have introduced the sign languages activities in the online services because they are easier to be provided than in the on-air services. There is also a very interesting experiment that has been made that is currently conducted by RAI, the Italian broadcaster, because they have automatized the sign language services. So there is a computer automatic originated avatar that is able to translate what in real time what is said by the speaker into sign languages. Unfortunately, this works only for the Italian sign language, but of course it's interesting that this kind of experiment are going on, and I think that the improvement of the artificial intelligence, we will see more and more of this tentative. So I recommend you to go through the study, and when the discussion will go eventually country by country, if there is time, we can see what is the current situation in each of this country from the legislative viewpoint. There is another report that is not public that has been produced internally by the European Broadcasting Union. This is older because it's June 22, so 2 years old, where that ideally complement what is the Audiovisual Observatory study, because it says what each public service broadcaster in each country is doing concretely in all the various area of activities. So, for instance, what is done in subtitling, what is done in audio description, in sign programs, and language of sign, etc., etc. Okay, I stop here because I want to leave space for the debate later. Thank you.
Thank you, Giacomo. Olivier speaking. Just one question. The first report that you spoke about, is that going to be done on a yearly basis? Will that be repeated to see the growth, or is that a one-off?
The report is one-off, but I know that internally they collect the data because they are in contact with the sources. They collect data. So I think that internally they will continue to update but the publishing, I think that they do only when needed. This time is the year where start the reflection about the Audiovisual Media Service Directive to know if there is need for another revision. So I think that they published because of that. I will put in the chat the link to the study.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Giacomo. So now next speaker we have is Indre, sitting next to me. And of course, we are in Lithuania. And the question is, what's happening in Lithuania? How is the act being carried into national legislation in Lithuania? And I guess, what does it mean for a person, for an end, I wouldn't call it an end user, but for someone living in this country?
Thank you for the floor and possibility to share the national approach that Lithuania taken to transpose European Accessibility Act. We had pretty hard discussions and debates how to implement the European Accessibility Act in the best way and the most beneficial to end users. We have to understand that the European Accessibility Act is not only about the accessibility, it's also about the competition as well, basically setting the common rules for the stakeholders participating in one or another sector that is included in the Act, to be aware what are the common rules applicable and not to make additional barriers to the basically sector, product or services they provide. Stemming from that, and given the holistic approach that is widely used among countries, we decided that we do not need supervision to allocate to a particular one authority. Mainly, it's now become integral part of the sector. Meaning, for instance, if we are talking about RRT, we have capacity and we are a regulator of electronic communication services, which is part of European Accessibility Act services it covers, meaning that we are also supervision authority for electronic communication services. It is integral part. Of course, setting legislation is not enough. The second part is capacity building, which was Vilmantas was talking during his speech. We have to understand what are the real outcomes of it. So collaboration established formally in our national legislation, and of course, some informal formats are essential to understand the usage, the real impact of the requirements it sets. So we have a lot of things to do internally because we have to understand what we are supervising. Well, because it's not only the declaration and not only what it is on the paper, we want the actual use. And of course, the good work was done when we had the requirements set for public authorities. So good examples are already set. So private sector can take a lot from there as well. There are additional requirements that are also set in the Accessibility Act as well as in the national law, establishing some particular technical requirements, which are basically the main concern, how to implement them on time, given that the standards are now being amended, which the stakeholders have to follow. A lot of concerns raised because we have 1 year until full implementation and coming into force of those requirements. And we are still some maybe gap, maybe not gap, but still in clarity or not, we are not yet sure how the technical standards will be amended. So, but still, given that we have preparation on the technical level that takes time, still stakeholders need to do and amend their networks accordingly, basically ensuring real-time text, total conversation that are basically obliged by law. So a lot of things to do, a lot of things for the stakeholders to be aware of, and of course, a lot of capacity building for us as supervisors to share best practices among supervision authorities that in Lithuania we have 4. So a lot of complex things to cover, but stemming from holistic approach and engagement from governmental as well as non-governmental sector, we hope that, well, this time should be dedicated for that.
Where do you start? Is there any priority that you should start with? Any field that requires accessibility more than others?
Well, as we are electronic communication regulator, and now electronic communication sector is key in various aspects and various sectors, because without connection, you are basically excluded from all the environment. So these technical feasibilities requiring and obliging real-time text, from my point of view, should be the focus for the stakeholders and for everyone, especially given that real-time text is also the one ensuring accessibility to 112, which is essential in cases of emergency.
Okay, and that works also, I guess, with website accessibility.
Yes, website. Actually, we have a few our stakeholders who are achievers on that, who are actually a bit ahead. Even the requirements are not fully come into force. They are doing progress, and they are consulting, and they are seeking for solutions to implement in a proper way their websites at least. But of course, we have more than 100 stakeholders which play in and are engaged in the electronic communication sector. So it's they should be concerned, and they should start doing actual preparatory activities related to proper implementation of accessibility requirements.
In fact, Vilmantas, in a nutshell, what is website accessibility? And I'm asking in a nutshell. You've got about 1 minute.
Okay, 1 minute. There is three main things. One is visibility, to be perceivable by vision, and that also affects those who have mental disabilities or some cognitive difficulties, reading difficulties, and so on. So we have to make our website as visible as possible, that good contrast, good fonts, good layout, and so on. And second part is not so intuitive. It's prepare website for technologies that blind, for example, use, that people with that control website with some additional keyboards, buttons, and without hands, with eyes, and so on. So that is not so intuitive because it's programming. Those technologies access code, and if that code is incorrect and not according to standards, website could be not usable. So this part is about good coding practices and implementing accessibility if website is very difficult, big system with a lot of functionalities.
But by not usable, you mean the machine will basically say, sorry, I can't read this, or will it just come up with rubbish?
It's could be either way. But simple example is you have a good website, you have an e-shop, you want to sell a lot of products and so on. person gathers in his basket a lot of products, he wants to spend a lot of money, he wants to check out, and he have to check the box, I agree with the terms and services and so on. And you can't, for example, because of bad programming, you can't do this only with keyboard. You have to do it with mouse. Some loops, some mistaken programming. And everything is in vain. Person that uses this AIDS technology will not buy and will not spend those hundreds or thousands of euros. It's one of the examples, and there's a lot of we could share about a lot of examples about menus, how they are expanded, not expanded, and so on. So there are particularities and some specific knowledge to this.
It's an excellent example. Money always speaks. Right. I can't see Lydia online. So I think that what we can do then is to open the floor up for questions. Perhaps I should first ask, before I open the floor for everyone to ask questions, and I hope there are going to be some questions. This is a dialogue, or even some comments on what you've heard so far. I could ask maybe Mohammed, if you have any specific comments and questions on what you've heard so far. Mohammed Shabib.
Yes, thank you everyone for your thought-provoking insights and interventions. My question is one, but it's not specifically addressed to anyone. Anyone who has the information can answer to this question. More often than not, we see good words written on the paper, but when it comes to actions, there are still some gaps. So how do you see this European Accessibility Act faring in terms of implementation?
Who wants to answer that?
I could try.
You could try. Comment us.
Because, as I said, we encountered a lot of interest groups, those who will have to implement this act. And bigger companies have resources, and they allocate one person, maybe they call it diversity specialist or in other way, and they try to gather information. They consult lawyers, they consult us, they try to raise awareness internally, and so on. So I had nice, really good experience with some companies. And of course, there were others that we called and we said, we have a nice event where we explain what is accessibility and it's good for you. And we explain European Accessibility Act. And they say, oh no, Christmas is coming. We have a rush in our service. We don't have time. We are collecting money from customers and so on. So, of course, but I think it's really nice tool because we are not United States. We don't have this tradition of suing companies and so on. But this act foresees kind of also punishment if company does not apply and does not comply to it and doesn't fix issues. So I think it's really good tool. We have to work together. We as NGO, governmental organizations, and somehow we will go forward. And I think after some time, it would be bad manners not to adhere to accessibility requirements. But for now, for me, I think, sorry to take so much floor, but for me, it's really interesting. For example, as you said, audiovisual media. And these questions about the scope of accessibility, what it is, because of course we want that everything would be captioned, that everything would be with sign language, that everything would be with audio description. But I think European Accessibility Act does not imply that everything should be. There are infrastructural, I could say, requirements that if movie is with audio description and you put it online in your service where you can access television and so on, so blind person could have possibility to turn on that audio description, because for now maybe some platforms don't have this possibility, or for example to access program on your TV and to read what is the next program after an hour, what is movie is coming. So these are infrastructural and maybe not so scary for you will, in my opinion, you will not need to make everything in audio or in sign language, or of course it's preferable. We have other laws that asks to do some percentage of media accessible in this way, but European Accessibility Act, I think, it has a bit less requirements, in my opinion. But I'm not a lawyer. It's not. Yeah, that's a disclaimer.
Okay, well, we have a hand up from a remote participant. Of course, if you wish to ask a question, oh, it's you. Okay, right. Sorry, I was. All right. Well, excellent. So, Andrea Melantia.
Okay, thank you very much. So it is very difficult because now we are in double sites, so personal and remote. And actually the possibility of using Eurodig remotely this year and previous years since the pandemic has actually helped in terms of disabilities. So you actually make a good point. So I'm physically here, but maybe you do not see me, so let me raise my hand just in case there. So it is, it is a brand new world. Now, I wanted to bring up a few things. So you mentioned about websites. This is a very important point about websites, because since the last 20 years, something like that, my government in Portugal has actually forced the adoption of accessible websites at the time with WCAG 1 and then 2.
A bit louder, or perhaps come closer to the stage. We're just told to use a mic. We have not got actual mics. We've got these systems. Sorry.
Just sit here.
Okay.
So, the question is, the governments, since the last 20 years, both in Portugal and in other countries, have actually adopted a logic where you are supposed to have accessible websites, at least for public services. And of course, that encourages private websites to do the same. Now, this is a matter of shaming, if you can, to say, oh, your website is not accessible, so you should really force the website to be accessible if it is an e-commerce shop. For instance, the CAPTCHA things are very difficult to manage if you don't have a mouse, as you mentioned. So all of that comes into play when we consider these kind of scenarios. Now, there is another scenario that I would mention, which is not related to websites, but accessibility in general. For instance, anyone who's remotely is not going to be here to see it, but we can definitely see that if we go outside, there is accessibility. We don't even notice. I actually had to go out to go down to have a look, because I went up and I thought, oh, I didn't see a lift. I didn't see anything that will help someone get up here. But in reality, next to the stairs, there's that, a thing that goes up. I'm not sure what the technical name of that thing is, but I was kind of hoping for a lift or something like that. Now, that is a workaround, and we need to distinguish the two, right? We need to distinguish the ones that are made from scratch in a building and the ones that are workarounds. I'm still happy with the workarounds. This is okay. It's better than having nothing. If you go to different rooms, for instance, at the very beginning of the building, when Youth Day was happening, the room was very ups and downs, but they did guarantee all the accessibility there. So that room was built or rebuilt from scratch and guaranteed all of that. So in terms of all of these accessibility issues, it is important to add it. I want to add one more thing. So tomorrow we'll have a different session on accessibility, but focusing on the technical aspects and a few examples of technology that can actually help with this. Today, it's more of a focus on the legal aspects, but I want to invite everyone who's interested in this topic to join us tomorrow to talk about technical things.
So, Andre, you're mentioning technical stuff that software and so on, that and hardware that can be added to already existing software and equipment and make it accessible.
Things like having a computer. Nowadays, any computer, you can actually have subtitles automatically, and you don't have to pay anything extra. You can just enable a feature, and that works with subtitles coming in from videos, let's say from YouTube, etc. The actual computer can do all of this. At the same time, you have technologies like Zoom, Teams, and many others that automatically generates all of these subtitles for you. But there are technologies that are available for every different kind of disability. So you name the disability, someone has come up with a solution for that. The biggest problem is that people are not aware that these technologies exist, and therefore they do not use them.
Cool. We look forward to the session tomorrow. Okay. Any other comments and questions? Please go ahead and please introduce yourself as you speak.
Hello, everyone. I hope my loud is loud enough. I'm Tapani Tadvainen from Technology of Finland, and I'd like to raise a practical problem I've seen with the Accessibility Act. That sometimes services, instead of being made accessible, are simply dropped altogether.
I'm really sorry to do so, but apparently they're not hearing me online. So could you maybe call me to the front? I'm really sorry to figure it out. Yes.
Sorry about this, Tapani. It looks as though we've got a speaker spot over here and the camera is wide enough, so this is great.
Okay, I trust you can hear me now.
Not so loud.
Loud enough. So I'm Tapani Tadvainen, Electronics Frontier Finland, and I want to raise a practical concern with the Accessibility Act that I've seen happen a few times, that some services, instead of being made accessible, are simply dropped altogether, blaming cost or whatever. Notably, recordings of sessions like this, but video left online, instead of making subtitles or whatever, it's simply dropped altogether. I'm not sure this is just a breathing problem or actual cost, which is usually cited. So maybe something should be done about that, say public funding or whatever, but I'm not sure. But anyway, that's a problem I've seen, and I think it should be addressed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I can
maybe.
I think a good point raised about those administrative or financial burdens. And from my point of view, we should talk about changing the mindset. If we are talking about the accessibility as the opening the possibilities to the clients and to the people you are engaged to, it opens opportunities. And if it is becoming a part of know your client aspects, because, for instance, well, considering Lithuania, we have 200,000 confirmed impairments, more even. And if we are considering those temporary ones, for instance, now I am recovering from ankle fracture, so I am not confirmed impairment, but temporary. I face some challenges with digital and infrastructural inclusion. And if we change the mindset of stakeholders, we are supervising that, for instance, do they want those 200,000 people be the clients? So then they should do everything to make those clients come to you. So it should be not a threatening approach that you will be fined if you are not following the rules, but it should be, fancy, or how to say it, if we can say, or...
Vilmentis used the word punished earlier. Maybe not punished. I think enforcement is what we're looking at, but it's more of an enticement to do it.
Yes, we have to see that being and showing respect to disabled people, even if we are considering the name of the act, it's not the Disability Act, it's Accessibility Act. It's vice versa. It's opening opportunities and not solving problems. Because if we are talking about the disability, we are somehow solving problems. When we are addressing issues as accessibility issues, we are opening opportunities. So if we change our mindset about the opening opportunities, we then I believe that those financial burdens would go to the second place, and the client as the key enabler of all the system, all the sector would come first.
Thank you. Giacomo Mazzoni.
Yes.
Over to you.
Thank you. I think that we are talking of financial problems, and this is one of the real issue for the broadcasting sector. The regulation is asking more and more to deliver accessible services and to extend, for instance, the number of the programs, the number of hours, the extend to live, and that is of course more costly than a recorded program. And on the other side, in the statistics provided by the survey that I was mentioning you before, all the broadcasters, especially public service broadcasters, been subject to budget cuts. More or less, they have lost between 2019 and 2022. They have lost 15% of the budget, all in all, around Europe. And the good indicator is that despite this budget cuts, in the same time, the money spent for accessibility services remains stable, even as increased of 1%. But when you are in the director of a broadcaster, public service broadcaster, and you have to decide what to do, where to cut, etc., you can understand that it's very difficult to imagine to extend the services. So I think that there are two things that need to be done. One is that an alliance between the association that are representing the people with impairment and the public service broadcaster, in order to be sure that the budget cuts are not affecting these services. On the contrary, to improve more the services. The second thing is that there is an interesting perspective that is the one that I was mentioning before, and that I put an example in the chat, is to use new technologies, and especially artificial intelligence, to try to increase the quality and the number and the extension of these services to all of the programming, all of the offer of the broadcasters. This is possible, but of course, as you know, you need to invest first in order to get services after. So there is a crunch and the contradiction. You need more resources, at least at the beginning, in order to improve the services before that this will bring to savings. So I think it's a battle of civilization that we need all to play together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Giacomo. We'll have a lady in the room here, and then I've just noticed Lydia Best has arrived. So we'll get Lydia to also say it throws a spanner into our clocked up machine, but there you go. Let's go for you, please, and introduce yourself, of course.
My name is Olgita Butkevičienė, and I'm from Vilnius University. I teach entrepreneurship and business models, and the CS educator has the power to change the mindset of future entrepreneurs. So my question is how we can better engage in the dialogue with government officials and higher education institutions in order to, to have this dialogue and understanding and the needed competencies for us as educators to form more accessible.
Better to repeat the question.
So the question was how formal education institutions can have a dialogue, engage into the dialogue with public institutions, and to know what competencies are required. Good question. We have asked for universities, for education, Ministry of Education, for a long time to include accessibility to those specialities, to computer science, designers, and so on. But universities have huge autonomy, and it's difficult to put rules to them. So I would suggest maybe if there is initiative from your side to just gather interest groups and talk about it. We as NGO are always ready to put our agenda and our experience and suggest, and I think public institutions also could join us.
Yeah, on behalf of BEREC, I can also share, for instance, we have periodical events that we gather on various topics, and we also want to engage participants from various perspectives, from end users, from stakeholders, from regulators, from academia as well, why not? Research academy and so on. For instance, we had the workshop that was held in April. We also had a dedicated session for the accessibility, and we had that we had engagement from various contributors. So if you are willing, just there are always announcements provided publicly. Follow, and I suppose we can also benefit from networking, where people know that, for instance, you or your colleagues are engaged, and we have a list later on to approach people to participate and share your views. So open possibilities from my point of view.
Thanks for this, Indra. We actually do have Lydia Best now, the president of the European Federation of Hard of Hearing People. I hope that you are able to speak. Lydia, welcome. There might have been a problem with the timing, but over to you.
Okay, thank you so much. Everybody hear me?
Yes. Perfect.
Okay, perfect. Wonderful. I really sincerely apologize. It's the timing, European and UK, and I just got it wrong. I really apologize, but I'm very pleased to be able to chime in at the last minute and to bring the hard of hearing perspective when we discuss the digital accessibility. I very much welcome to see BEREC actually participating here and discussing this as well. Two major issues for hard of hearing people, which we see across European Union, are access to information. So we know that in general, broadcasters, even public broadcasters, let alone private, do not always provide access via subtitling or captioning in American terms, and that is causing a lot of problems for our members who are excluded from actively participating in all the different parts of cultural and political social life when it comes to broadcasting. In the same way, when it comes to the streaming services, they are also not fully accessible to hard of hearing people. Lastly, the telephoning. As we've seen during the pandemic, a lot of things and the way how services are running, especially public services, have changed. The behaviors have changed. You no longer could come in person to sort your issues, whatever you had. You were forced into using the telephone. And many hard of hearing people, deafened people who lose their hearing suddenly later in life, struggle with being able to actually get the issues, whatever they need, resolved over the phone because they cannot hear very well. Just because we show as we are hearing okay with hearing aids or our cochlear implants processors, it does not mean that we actually understand very well. It's very easy to think that technology resolves all the issues when it comes to assistive technology. It does help enormously, but we need, in addition, assistive services, a way of inclusive services when we can actually contact anyone on our own terms. And that means that the public services in general are still not available to us. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your intervention and for taking part. You've seen some of the discussions here. Do you have any comments on what's been said today?
Can you give me a clue?
Oh, well, on the various discussions
because I joined late.
Oh, yeah,
joined
well,
late, yeah.
so some of the points that were made were that there should be enforcement of the act now that it is being rolled out. And somehow, of course, the big firms have the money, but others might not. So how can this be handled?
Yes, I fully agree. And I know what I've been hearing also from the European Accessibility Summit in June. What is in June? Yeah, it was beginning of June. And I know that European Accessibility Act does not seem to be ready. I mean, the countries are not ready for the European Accessibility Act. And that is a problem. The problem is also because this is a directive, in fact. And the similar problem was the issue and continues to be an issue with Audiovisual Media Services Directive, the one which is obviously addressing with Article 7, the broadcasting access. Now, from what I have seen, and we have seen across Europe, is that unfortunately countries decide, pick and choose what they use from those directives that they might fully implement, or regulators. And we have seen, especially when it comes to audiovisual media services, it's such a big disparity between countries where they are more accessible to hard of hearing people and nearly not accessible with subtitling. On top of that, there is also a lack of quality control. So it's fine, but some broadcasters, for example, think, let's bring automated captioning, just completely automated, and we can tick the box. We've done the accessibility, except it's not accurate. So you haven't actually provided accessibility because it's not usable. There still has to be a minimum quality of for the user experience. In addition, yes, we need the monitoring. And one of the roles of our association is to monitor users' experience. That's what we can do, and pass it on to the European Commission and decision makers and keep pushing. But yes, monitoring is number one. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Lydia. We were going to give 15 minutes to panelists to talk about the next steps. Because we're generous, we'll probably make it 30 seconds. But let's have Dr. Shabir. Mohammed, over to you. And hopefully the boss in the room who's standing opposite me is going to give us a little more time.
I will try to do my best.
Yes, thank you.
I promise you a lot of time.
Thank you very much. This is Mohammed Shabir for the record. I know we are at the top of the hour and we have to finish this session. Thank you very much for joining this session. The only concluding statement that I would say is, I know that money is the problem and big firms do have the money. But sometimes it comes down to the question of willingness, whether they want to spend or not. At the same time, when it comes to accessibility, money could be a problem. I know it's a big problem, but it should not be. It should not come in the way of accessibility. It should not be made an excuse. Companies, businesses do invest in there, and there I disagree with an earlier point that it should not be punishment when it comes to the enforcement of European Accessibility Act. Sometimes carrot is good. People do accept that, but sometimes accessibility requires stick as well. So punishment factor is really crucial when it comes to implementation of those kind of accessibility acts. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. And as technology becomes cheaper, I hope that the money problem will be something that will be a thing of the past. Giacomo Mazzoni. And if you want us to listen to you, you have to unmute. Yep.
Yeah. So I think that, yes, the main problem are the resources, as has been said. And I think that there are ways that that could be explored. I just mentioned, for instance, that in the chat that in some areas of the world, they are asking platform to contribute to the health fee of the media system. For instance, in Australia, as you know, the platform have to contribute to finance the newspapers. In Canada, they recently asked for the internet platform to contribute to the broadcasting platforms and so on. So I think we need to explore for additional resources. way of funding, and this has to come from where the money has gone all around this year. So we know where it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Giacomo. Indre?
Well, what comes to my mind and what is a possible call for action is you should not wait the deadline, which is the next year's June. Start doing now and learning by doing now when you have a possibility to implement the accessibility requirements in the best way for the end users. And then the fine wouldn't be a solution for you because you will make everything prepare in advance and know your customer in advance will fit you well.
That should be something we should all follow. If you're going to do something, do it now.
Yeah, or yesterday.
Or yesterday. Momentous.
So for now, we don't have leadership from European Commission to making some common practices, common standards. So I really would encourage dialogue between European countries and in advance and share good practices and establish common practices. Encouraged to read carefully the European Accessibility Act, because as I said, we wish a lot of things. Some things we put it because we want, but maybe it's in some areas it's a bit easier to implement than we think. Maybe we want too much from Accessibility Act and some words are not there. So I just would encourage to read carefully. And of course, we need common practice because to invent everything from zero, it's difficult.
And BEREC is also putting this focus on the next year's agenda, and we have also topics dedicated to the accessibility and measures related to that for the next year's program.
Good. And finally, Lydia.
Thank you very much. So just quickly to say, when it comes to the digital access and the streaming platforms especially, we are all consumers. We all pay the subscription fees to access those platforms. I cannot understand why it is so difficult for those giant platforms, I'm not going to drop names, to actually to invest in accessibility features such as subtitling, because it should be part of the business profile, like it is in other countries, like it is in the United States. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lydia. And that really is, unfortunately, the end of our session before we get shot. So, no? Okay, good. We're still in good terms. Thank you so much. Thanks to everyone who has attended. Thanks to our panelists, of course, for their wisdom and the points they have made. And there is a session, as you said, tomorrow, 3 o'clock, tomorrow, 3 o'clock, for the technology behind all of that. So it's somewhere in this building, hopefully. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you and bye.